Lesotho relations, highlighting how the shared history has shaped current diplomatic and economic ties. Good evening and welcome to Botswana Tonight.
Nice to be here. My pleasure.
We are blessed to have you here in the studio with us tonight. But I suppose just briefly talking to us, particularly the young ones, because quite often we think, because we know that we have a deep history, shared culture, shared political history, we suppose everybody knows it. Just a brief into where we come from with Lesotho.
Well, essentially, we're two peoples with the common roots when we talk about Basotho and Botswana. When you look at, well, besides the language, when you look at the clans or Marafi that make up Lesotho, they're very much parallel to our own. The royal family in Lesotho is of Makweno origin, Batlokwa, the names that we know here. And that goes, and we share the same legends going back to ancient rulers like Masilo and Malope. But in more modern times, I mean, even in the pre-colonial era, there were strong ties between the likes of Mashweshwe and Sokoma, Sechele. Then in the colonial period, there was a lot of interaction. We had common interests in trying to stay out of the Union of South Africa, for example. And because of that, our traditional leaders and others worked very closely together. Lobbying in Britain in 1908, 1909, and thereafter keeping up a constant dialogue and petitions and other things. Of course, in the world wars, our troops fought side by side in the same units. And then as the 1950s rolled around, there was other forms of cooperation, particularly, for example, the University of, what became University of Lesotho, Botswana and Swaziland. It even started as University of Bechuanaland, Basotholand, and Swaziland. And a number of other things. Many of our early, that is, people from the 1960s were educated at Roma. But if we're to move it forward, our modern relationship took, I think, a renewed turn during the time of Mohai. That's when we signed a number of MOUs. The restoration of democracy in Lesotho and consolidation of democracy in Lesotho was, to a certain degree, we were engaged in that. You may remember going back that we even sent the BDF there as part of peacekeeping operations. So we have a very long interrelationship, and it's an interrelationship that's also reflected in our families. Many Botswana have Basotho in-laws.
Yes, and we do actually have a village here that is full of Basotho. I don't know, I think I'm told that we have to cross over. I may be mistaken in that, yes. We have to interrupt this conversation, but we will continue as we cross over to Maseru, Lesotho, where Lesotho's King Letsie III is hosting a state banquet in honor of President Advocate Duma Boko, who arrived in Lesotho this morning for a 3-day working visit. As part of the president's historic visit to the Mountain Kingdom, he will on Thursday attend King Letsie's 62nd birthday celebration, a revered annual event for Basotho that will take place 40 kilometers outside the capital city, Maseru. Let's cross over to Lesotho to that state banquet. Good evening.
And international organizations, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dumela magaetso. Se ke tšhentšhile leleme jwang. Bjale le nna ke fihletswe ke baheso. On behalf of the government, the people of Lesotho, and indeed on my own behalf, I wish to extend a warm welcome to you all. But in particular, I wish to welcome His Excellency Advocate Duma Boko, President of the Republic of Botswana, and the entire delegation of Botswana to the Mountain Kingdom. You are welcome. This evening's banquet is not just a mere ceremonial gathering. It is a high-level occasion under the command of His Majesty the King, in recognition of the deep and strong relations that so happily subsist between Lesotho and Botswana, and held in celebration of the enduring friendship, mutual respect, and shared destiny that bind our two sisterly countries. Lesotho and Botswana are more than just two South African countries which share membership in regional and international organizations, but they are countries that share deep family ties and kinship, joined by history, culture, and a common vision for peaceful and prosperous Southern Africa. Our peoples, Basotho and Botswana, share ancestral roots, linguistic ties, and cultural traditions that stretch back in generations. Therefore, we are absolutely delighted that the presidential delegation of Botswana is here in Lesotho to celebrate with us the 62nd birthday anniversary of His Majesty King Letsie III. Your Excellency the President, we are very grateful indeed with your presence in Lesotho. Re a leboga. Re a leboga tautona ya Botswana. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not the guest of honor. I have my boss here today. At this state banquet, nor am I the host of this important gathering, but mine was to deliver the words of welcome and brotherhood from the government and the people of Lesotho to the President and his entourage. And of course, to all of you who have managed to grace this occasion with your presence this evening. At this moment, may I invite His Majesty to deliver his welcome remarks. Your Majesty.
Please. This glass in front of me should be a clue for what I'm about to do. So please get ready. But before I get there, allow me to also pay my respects to Your Majesty, Mayor Masenate, Your Excellency, Advocate Duma Boko, the President of the Republic of Botswana, the Right Honorable the Prime Minister, Ndati Samuele Ntsukwane Matekane, Honorable President of the Senate, Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, Your Lordship, the Chief Justice, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Ministers, particularly visiting ministers from the Republic of Botswana, Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, and heads of international organizations, senior government officials, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is with profound gratitude and a deep sense of honor that I join you all this evening to extend a warm and heartfelt welcome to His Excellency, Advocate Duma Boko, President of the Republic of Botswana, on the occasion of his first official visit to the Kingdom of Lesotho since assuming office in November 2024. As we gather this evening, we not only celebrate this important diplomatic milestone, but we also pay tribute to the enduring friendship and shared aspirations that unite our two nations. Though separated by geography, Lesotho and Botswana are bound by a profound kinship. One rooted in common ancestry, cultural affinity, mutual respect, and unwavering solidarity. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as Basotho, we recall with deep gratitude the steadfast support that Botswana has always extended to us in times of difficulty and in times of need. Equally, we take pride in the moments when Lesotho stood shoulder to shoulder with Botswana in the pursuit of justice, peace, and prosperity across our region. This legacy of unity was laid by our forebears, who forged strong alliances to resist colonial encroachment and protect the dignity of our people. In the early part of the 20th century, our countries once again stood together to protect our territorial integrity at the time of the formation of the Union of South Africa, a process which threatened to absorb the then High Commission territories of Basotho land, Botswana land, and Swaziland. That resistance was not merely political. It was a reaffirmation of our shared identity and destiny. As our elders say, and as we say in Sesotho, Njapedi hai hlolwe ke sebata. And we also say, kopano ke matla. Indeed, we have stood together in the past, and we shall continue to stand together in the future, in unity and in purpose. Bundati le bomme, beyond diplomacy and statecraft, it is the people-to-people relations that form the heartbeat of our partnership. It is Basotho and Botswana who embody the spirit of this enduring friendship. Across generations, students, entrepreneurs, artists, and families from both countries have built bridges of understanding that transcend borders. These human connections are not peripheral. They are central to the strength of our relationship. And they must be cherished, nurtured, and passed on to future generations. I am sure that there are some of you who fondly remember the era of the University of Botswana, Lesotho, and Swaziland, where Basotho, Botswana, and Amaswati studied, sang, and played together. It is also a well-known fact that many former students of that revered institution found life partners as a result of that collegiality. These bonds were further strengthened through the Boleswa Intervarsity Games, a cherished tradition that continues to unite our youth through sport, culture, and shared experience. These exchanges are not merely ceremonial. They are the foundation of a lasting fraternity among Basotho, Botswana, and also Amaswati. Today, our bilateral cooperation spans a wide range of sectors, all grounded in the solid foundation of people-to-people interactions. From informal cross-border trade and tourism led by our women and youth, to education, infrastructure, and regional peace initiatives, these ties define the vibrant and dynamic relationship between our two sister nations. Our joint membership in SACU, SADC, the African Union, the Commonwealth, and the United Nations reflects our common commitment to unity, sustainable development, and collective progress. We take pride in the strides we have made together in promoting human development and economic integration. But we must now go further by deliberately investing in manufacturing, agricultural productivity and resilience, and women and youth empowerment. The binational commission signed today must not remain a policy framework on paper. It should become a living instrument that delivers tangible results for the hopes and dreams of our peoples and our economies. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as we gather this evening, let us reaffirm our commitment to the strong and cordial relations between the Kingdom of Lesotho and the Republic of Botswana. Let us renew our shared vision of a Southern Africa that is peaceful, prosperous, and inclusive. Let us continue to learn from one another, support one another, and celebrate the values that bind us together. May the friendship between Lesotho and Botswana thrive for generations to come. May our shared totems, oral traditions, and culture forever remind us that we are one people. May I now request you humbly to be upstanding. Charge your glasses and join me in proposing a toast to our partnership, our people, and to the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Cheers. I thank you all. Kgotso pula nala.
Your Majesties, Your Excellencies, may I humbly now invite His Excellency President Boko for a toast and to deliver words of response to His Majesty's welcome remarks. Your Excellency.
May I kindly request that you resume and take your seats. I've been placed in a difficult situation. Ordinarily in the African culture, nobody speaks after the king has spoken. It is something of an impropriety. At best, it may in fact be considered disrespectful. But where it is the king himself who permits and lets you speak at his pleasure, he temporarily imbues you and adorns you with the garbs and accolades of royalty. And I accept the adornment with humility and immense gratitude. Let me gratefully acknowledge His Majesty, King Letsie III, and appreciate the profound remarks that he made tonight. Let me also appreciate the Queen, who has been to Botswana to participate in the desert walk. And we are most grateful. The Right Honorable Prime Minister, completing the arm of government, the executive, I appreciate you as well. Let me acknowledge also the legislature that is eminently represented here by the President of the Senate and the Speaker of Parliament. And let me also acknowledge the presence of the judiciary, those who keep us in check, ensuring that there are no excesses and abuses of power and authority, and resolving whatever conflicts and disputes arise in our societies and communities, as they do from time to time. We thank them for the great work that they do in keeping us on the straight and narrow. Thank you very much. The diplomatic community is also represented here. We also have, I understand, representatives of international organizations. We appreciate your presence. Ladies and gentlemen, I will not speak. I will merely appreciate and circle the words spoken by the king, because in our culture we must build a wall around what the king has said, as a sign of both obeisance and reverence and I do so. Well, thank you very much, Your Majesty. Lesotho and Botswana represent or have the same people, really, bound together by culture and language. We in Botswana see ourselves in the Basotho, through a shared vision. We've cooperated with each other over a long period of time. In fact, it seems we almost convinced the Right Honorable Prime Minister to take up more than just residence. We almost won him over to take up citizenship. How he resisted and escaped still confounds me. But he spent a good 8 years in Botswana, traveling the length and breadth of the country, participating in development work, building roads, infrastructure in Botswana. I'd like to believe that he gained invaluable experience there. So Lesotho is much in our debt. You have us to thank. We trained him. We gave him the requisite experience and skills. And we sent him back to you so that he may now lead the charge in stabilizing and developing the Kingdom of Lesotho. We are proud of this relationship. We are proud of the affinities between Botswana and Basotho. And we are grateful that this relationship subsists. It endures to this day, and we are committed to ensuring that it abides into the future. The relationship, if I may be frank, has not been quite as robust and as strong as it should have been, which is why I had to be here today to rekindle and reaffirm our relationship and participate in the signing of the Binational Commission to elevate our relationship and bring it to a level where we must now engage with each other in a formal and structured way towards the development of both our nations. The Sesotho language and Setswana are kindred languages. Botswana believe Sesotho is an adulterated version of Setswana. Basotho believe that Setswana is stunted Sesotho, that Sesotho that refused to grow. That goes to show you how fondly these two peoples regard each other. We are here to affirm, cement, deepen, and augment that relationship. There's a lot we will do together, and I look forward to visits from the Right Honorable Prime Minister, from His Majesty the King, and the Queen as well. Please come again. Come as many times as you wish. Not just to walk, sometimes to talk to us and guide and instruct. We experience in Botswana an increasing spiral of violence arising from the collapse of the marriage institution and the family. It is challenged. We are wrestling with this crisis of gender-based violence. We haven't won yet. Victory seems somewhat far off, but we are engaged. We believe that the strong culture and traditions in Lesotho may offer us invaluable insights into how we may ourselves return to our roots and our culture and address some of these trenchant problems. We have to develop our economies and develop very fast. Lesotho has faced challenges, cyclical instability. We are happy that peace and calm have returned. Not, it seems to me, for a brief sojourn, but to stay. We encourage this. We stand with Lesotho, ready to share our own experiences of a country that has been stable and democratic, that was under the leadership of a single party for 58 years, that saw a seamless, peaceful, orderly change of government. It is this lesson that we stand ready to impart to others on the continent and throughout the world. We believe that our experience may serve as inspiration to Basotho, to say, if those people who speak stunted Sesotho could do it, then Basotho can also do it. And so I'm happy that Lesotho is now on a firm path to growth and hopefully inclusive prosperity. We are on the same path as Botswana, wrestling with economic challenges arising from our dependence on a single commodity, diamonds. We now have to diversify under pressure of calamity. We have no choice. We have to do it. And we trust that the binds and bonds that exist between our two nations will anchor both and ensure that we march together towards this inclusive prosperity. At this point, may I kindly and humbly request that you rise. Because I'm also royalty for a moment. that included the King and the Queen. To the King on the eve of his celebration of his 62nd birthday, to his good health, to his longevity, to the good and friendly relations between Lesotho and Botswana, to the peace and prosperity of these two nations. Please join me in drinking a toast. Cheers.
Well, we've just witnessed the President Advocate Duma Boko giving a toast to the peace and prosperity of both Botswana and, of course, the Kingdom of Lesotho. We are in studio joined by historian Dr. Jeff Ramsey, really to speak about the relations between the two nations. And before we crossed over to Lesotho to hear what the Prime Minister had to say about these relations, what the King himself, His Majesty the King Letsie the Third, had to say about Botswana and Lesotho, and of course President Duma Boko. We were talking about the relations, and I really think they really buttressed what you were talking about, indeed. That we have a common, a shared history in terms of our culture, in terms of our values, in terms of the trajectory, really, how far we have come pre-independence to where we are now. And some of the things that we have done, I think His Majesty there did even speak about some of us having found a life partners as a result of this shared history. But perhaps let's just cast our eyes to some of the things that we picked from the remarks that they shared. I do recall His Majesty there speaking about the fact that we have a shared experience in democracy, in stability, in really fighting for justice at a very difficult time in Southern African history.
Yes. Well, Lesotho had a even more difficult time, it seems, than we did. But we shared a common threat, and that is we were living in the shadow of the apartheid regime. And so much of the instability that was occurred in Lesotho from the time of their independence off and on through the 70s, 80s, 90s, it was a legacy and sometimes a direct intervention by the apartheid state. At one point, they blockaded the entire country to bring down the government. At other times, they tried to infiltrate their governments, just like us, but in some ways, to an even greater extent, they had cross-border attacks and the likes. They, like us, were a haven for refugees. But, of course, they were surrounded on all sides by the apartheid regime. So they had a very difficult time in their first years of independence. Of course, they got their independence only a few days after us. Princess Marina, who represented the Queen at our independence, went down to Maseru to represent Britain at their independence. So we were really born together, or reborn together, I should say, because we had existed before colonialism. So yes, there are so many ties. We could talk all night. The King was referring to the situation between particularly 1908 and 1910, when the monarchs of Lesotho and Botswana worked very closely together, like I said, to lobby the British government to keep their countries, as well as Swaziland, out of, or Eswatini as we call it today, out of the Union of South Africa. That was a very big struggle. And it helped to not only give birth to our countries, but it also helped to give birth to what became the African National Congress. Mm-hmm. So yes, there are many deep ties. Like I said, we were also in the same units during the world wars, World War I, World War II, fighting in Italy, France. And we had a military force in Palestine up until 1949, when pressure was put on us to give up our military or to dissolve the colonial military that had begun to be formed. That also left Lesotho, like us, even more vulnerable at independence.
Okay. I think still speaking of vulnerability, President Advocate Duma Boko, they did speak about the instability that has sort of become one would say part and parcel of the democracy of the political situation in Lesotho. We can go back to 1998, that which everybody talks about,
Yes.
The SADC intervention there with Botswana and South Africa, sending defense forces there. But we also know that beyond that, there's always been something bumbling under as far as the political situation in Lesotho is concerned. And President Boko said there's a lot that we can share with them, borrowing from our peaceful transition. I don't know what we make of Lesotho's instability. Could it be that it's embedded in just historically how it's always evolved, or what else is happening there that they could learn from us?
Well, I think it's in Lesotho say morena ke morena kabafu, which is just like kosi ke kosi kabatu. So when we talk about the norms of the Kotla, Mualebe and the likes, they have basically the same thing. So I don't know that it's so much tradition. I would really put a light on the difficulties, the pressures that Lesotho's been, both political and economic, since independence. There was a lot of progress after 1998 and that intervention. During the Moai era, we had very close relations and very friendly relations. It's true that they have some rough and tumble politics in Lesotho, but to their credit, they've always gone beyond it. There was once a military coup, but restoration of civilian control has been recurring. Elections have been recurring. So I would like to believe that they're on the same path, and yes, we can share with each other. And of course, this is a regional growth as well. But in that respect, I think the key to both countries right now, we're both facing difficult economic times. And in that respect, there's bilateral things that we can do, but also bilateral initiatives that we can take to multilateral situation, like, for example, the Southern African Customs Union. Ourselves, Lesotho, Swaziland, well, I should say Eswatini these days, and Namibia, we have a common interest in balancing SACO, and SACO as a whole has a common interest in trying to deal with the challenges ongoing in global trade. Botswana and Lesotho were recently picked out because we have advantageous trade relationship with the U.S. in terms of imports, exports. And this is because of initiatives that, in fact, have been forged by the United States in the past. At any rate, in resolving issues like tariffs and the likes, we're going to have a SACO-wide initiative that takes on board the interests of Botswana and Lesotho.
Okay. It's quite interesting now when you talk about Botswana and Lesotho being picked out, because similarly, in as much as the trade tariffs that President Donald Trump has really set on anyone who's doing business with the U.S., who's exporting to the U.S., there's a suggestion that Lesotho is even more vulnerable because of the textile industry and what they benefited through AGOA.
Yeah, and the irony, you just said it, AGOA. The irony is that the U.S. government, particularly at the time of President George W. Bush, encouraged this, what we welcomed as a very good initiative from the Americans at the time, initiative that allowed relatively free access to the American market from developing countries. And that was a lifeline to Lesotho at the time. They did grow this textile industry and indigenize their textile industry given in the framework of the AGOA process that the Americans had put in place. And in some ways they exceeded us in that respect. We remained dependent on diamonds. We did have AGOA exports as well. So in a way, both countries are being penalized for succeeding in initiatives that the Americans had forged in terms of earlier partnership with us. But hopefully we can get that message across. At the same time, it has to be a SACO effort, because at the end of the day, Trump with his graphs was looking at imports, exports, not at tariffs. The tariffs that we have with the United States are the same with Lesotho and South Africa. We have the common customs union. So we need to speak as SACU, I believe, to the Americans and indeed to the EU and all other trading partners.
Okay, so in light of this, I think one of the things that was also referred to by His Majesty Letsie III is the Binational Commission, and that his expectation is that it moves from paper to actually being something that is actually being implemented, and people begin to actually realize the results. And we understand that this is an evolution of a joint commission on technical and economic cooperation between the two. And we're talking about SACU with everybody else, but if we are to begin at the Botswana SADC level, at the bilateral level, what is the expectation out of this that we can take into a wider region?
Yeah, well, the binational commission concept was something that we initially forged with South Africa during the Mahai era. And it brings together first ministers in dialogue, and then we have annual or biannual, depending on the MOU, summits where we have the heads of government meet together with their cabinet to resolve outstanding issues. So it's kind of like our high-level consultative council process, but now taken to a bilateral international level. Mm-hmm. So in the past, we found this very valuable in our relationships with South Africa, with Zimbabwe, with Namibia. So it's, in a sense, overdue to have a similar relationship with Lesotho.
Okay, so based on what we understand now, what are we looking at the current realities? I mean, we talk about the tariffs, but we also understand that they have diamonds, we have diamonds, that there's strain as far as diamond revenue is concerned. What are the expectations from an agreement of this nature, from cooperation of this nature, in terms of trade, in terms of investment and others?
Well, I suppose we can't rely on what used to be the diamond cartel. We certainly have a common interest, along with Namibia and indeed South Africa, in the promotion of natural diamonds, and even as we diversify. So yes, they are a player in that. Of course, we have other issues with them, like the water carrier project, which has, it's good that we seem to be getting on with it. It's not a new concept, but a concept that seemed to have been put on the back burner, and it's now coming back to the front. Lesotho is rich in water, and South Africa, as well as us, can benefit greatly from that for us in terms of backup supplies and the likes for South Africa. And so this underscores more broadly the interdependence that all of our countries have, and that I think is key to us moving forward. We will not be able to necessarily pull ourselves out of our current economic challenges if we don't redouble our efforts, in my view, towards economic integration and political cooperation.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, you gave us a historical context of where the Binational Commission sort of started, talking about what we have in place with South Africa at the time, with Namibia. Now we are here with Lesotho. One may wonder, we are part of a regional bloc as in SADC, but we're also part of a custom bloc as well. How do these bilateral agreements or cooperation feed into the regional or the broader context? And are there any challenges or any risks of having some of these things not necessarily being aligned to the bigger context?
No, well, the key thing is that they be aligned and that they reinforce wider regional initiatives. Nonetheless, I think, for example, that the smaller countries in SACU have a common interest in talking in cooperation to help balance SACU, for example, with the South Africans. When we look at Lesotho, we have water, we have technical cooperation that we can do, agricultural cooperation. But if we look around the region, the same thing can be said of South Africa, of Namibia, which should be our west coast for exports, just as South Africa is our southern and eastern coast, and ultimately Mozambique through Zimbabwe. So it's a broad effort, but in any broad effort, you have to sit down with your partners from time to time as, we'll call them, individual states. In some ways to just put together your caucusing for the broader initiatives. Again, SACU has to work in tandem with not only SADC, but the wider attempts to create a southern and eastern Africa trade zone.
Okay. Now, when we talk about the water project, for example, my understanding is that it's a conversation that has been going since 2017, and I stand to be corrected there.
Yes, I think it's even earlier, but yes, it's been going on for some time.
Yes, one wonders if we have moved from just having a joint commission on cooperation to a bi-national commission. What does that mean in terms of commitment, in terms of really fast-tracking a project of this nature? That's the first one. The second one is there's a third player here, since the pipeline goes through South Africa. What sort of conversations have been going as far as that is concerned?
Well, both in the water project itself, but also in the river basin initiatives for the Orange or Gap River. There's extensive conversations between both the ministers and at the government-to-government level, but at ministry-to-ministry levels as well. So, we are not, we are all under the threat of aridity if we're talking about South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, whereas water is gold. It's like the gold of Lesotho. They have it in abundance. Mm-hmm. So that gives them something to leverage with the region and leverage in a very positive way. But at the same time, they need to work with us, that is South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, for the wider river basin issues and environmental issues. It's all about sustainability and creating win-win situations.
Okay. A visit like this for to Lesotho, I mean, having a state banquet hosted on behalf of our president and his entourage, and of course attending His Majesty's birthday celebrations. A visit like that with all these activities, what does it do for us as a country, for the president himself, from a diplomatic level?
Well, I think symbolism can be important, and what I recall is that in previous situations, certainly during the Moai era, we had a lot of this. That is, a lot of visits back and forth with Lesotho, cooperation with Lesotho. And it may be that we also had, COVID and other things coming into the thing, which may have stalled some projects. But I think I would look at it as a revival of a relationship that is long-standing and has been growing, and has certainly consolidated as Lesotho has consolidated its democracy.
I think it's quite interesting when you talk about revival, because I think, I don't know if it was His Majesty speaking of revival and renewal of relations, or if it was His Excellency. And I'm curious to find out, why are we specific about these two terms, a revival and a renewal?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been out of government, but my impression is that our relationship with Lesotho had been taken for granted, perhaps. That might be too strong a word, but given the intensity of relations that we were having 15, 20 years ago, and then if I look at the last 5 or so years, maybe, I haven't seen the fruition of some of the initiatives we were talking about a while ago, like this water project. So if we're moving forward, that's very welcome. And so, yes, I think revival is the right word.
Okay. The water project, quite often scholars say Botswana is not landlocked, it's water-linked. And we've talked about sometimes the waters, or just water itself, being used for diplomatic or in diplomatic situations. How do we see this water project doing that for us with Lesotho?
Well, it will bind South Africa, Botswana, and Lesotho in common development. Lesotho has, its own developmental needs, so this is a precious resource for them that they can leverage on economically. But it's one of many water projects that I think the region will have to undertake to ensure environmental sustainability, agricultural production. We have other water issues in terms of sharing the Zambezi, for example, with our partners in Namibia, Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe. But if it underscores the fact that if we don't work as in bilateral, multilateral context, some of these projects cannot work. I mean, to move away, look at Lake Kariba, the biggest man-made lake in Africa, I think in the world. And that is a project that is possible and sustainable because now it's Zambia and Zimbabwe. It started earlier in the colonial era, but it's been sustained because Zimbabwe and Zambia have sustained it. It's vital to those two countries, and it's a harbinger of the kind of projects in water that we can have across the region.
Okay, so what does the future look like then for our relations with Namibia within the context of, rather with the Kingdom of Lesotho, within the context of what we also need to do as far as regionally, as far as SACU, as far as SADC are concerned?
Well, I think that this framework is a big step forward. It escalates us to, before it's just, okay, so maybe we'll go down there, maybe they'll come here, maybe we'll meet at SADC or SACU. Now, the Binational Commission, it gives us a schedule, it gives us targets and a framework to cooperate in endless number of issues, because it's a ministry to ministry coming together to look at where do we have opportunities for win-win situations. And it can be in culture and social issues as well as, of course, economic and political issues.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeff Ramsey. They're speaking to us about the relations between the Republic of Botswana and the Kingdom of Lesotho. Of course, this comes off the back of President Advocate Duma Boko visiting the Kingdom of Lesotho. We just witnessed the State Banquet there where the Prime Minister, Samuel Matekane, and of course His Majesty King Letsie III and President Advocate Boko did speak to the deep ties that we share, did speak to the prosperity and the vision that they hope that both nations and the entire region actually should attain. That's how we come to the end of our conversation this evening. Go phatlalatso ya motlakase go tokafatsa tiriso le go rotloetsa phadisano mo ditirong le go bula metswedi ya peeletso mo mohameng o ikemetseng. Puso e emetswe ke lekalana la Piepa le Deloitte Botswana ba dirile tumelano ya semmuso go simolola phatlalatso makalana mangwe a Botswana Corporation. Legato le le solofetswe go tokafatsa